to all of you out there who are interested in understanding what's going on with the circle of love and with our current, the new leg, the new chapter in our story. So I will try to fill you in. So you might say today is the beginning of a new chapter. And for the last nearly 9 years, I have been communicating daily with those heaven side and getting information. And through those experiences, I've had a lot of adventures. I've had a lot of adventures, and I've connected with a lot of people on Earth. I've done different chapters in this adventure, you might say. The initial chapter, I guess you would say, was when I began, when Steve Jobs came to me and started talking to me and wouldn't go away. And that led to a lot of astral journeys, a lot of experiences, and a lot of development. And I had some very, very hard passages during this period because I had to get rid of a lot of dark energy. And then I went on to the next stage, which was essentially doing a lot of psychic sessions for people. A good bulk of them were free, and I was doing them mostly for parents who had lost children. And so I figure I probably did over 1,000 of those sessions at that time over a period of years, a couple of years. And it was very, very productive to me. And I hope for all those who came to me. In fact, a number of them did tell me it was so productive that it undoubtedly saved their lives because they were actually contemplating suicide from the devastation of having lost this child, and to know that the child is okay, heaven side, had to get all the validations, was very reaffirming to them. But it was also reaffirming to me to know that the connections could be validated by somebody that I was talking to and would say, yes, 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 I get that. That's true. So that helped a lot, just in terms of my confidence. From there, we moved on to a different stage. And that stage was less about being a medium for other people and more about what those heaven side had to say about the world, about what's happening in the world, about history, about the origins of humanity. And many books ensued from what they said. And over time, it became more fluid, and we became more fluid. At first, it was simply telepathic, but over time, we began to use a pendulum and a letterboard, just a pendulum like this, and a letterboard, looking for my letterboard so I can show you what it looks like. It's nothing special. Um, Here's one, just something I printed off with the alphabet on it in a half circle. And that was really helpful because they could move the pendulum. It therefore gave me extra validation, so I'm getting more validation. And I have to tell you that in the initial stages, especially, I had tons and tons of validations. Other psychic mediums who would come through and spontaneously confirm Steve's identity, even though they didn't even know that we had that connection. Many, many things happened. And he would tell me things that I could look up. And others came through that would tell me things that I could look up too and validate their identity, etc. So it's gone on for 8.5 years. Of course, I had a pretty eventful life before that, but right now I'm focused on the last nearly 9 years. It'll be 9 years in October. October 14th is when I connected with Steve, and other things happened, prior to that for a month or two before that were significant. However, now we've completed another stage, which is a lot of effort to reach out to people through videos, through sessions, group sessions with people, to try to bring people together in a group in order to assist in helping those who are ready to awaken to what's happening. So, what is happening? Well, what's happening is some pretty destructive energy on the earth. Many of you know it as climate change. And some of you who come from a religious bent may think of it as the Armageddon, the time of the rapture, whatever. It doesn't matter uh, if you interpret it that way. That's fine. You can interpret it that way and say climate change is not real, but it's God coming to save the righteous and destroy the others. However, you want to interpret it is fine because that's your interpretation of what's going on is your story. That's the story you got. And if you and your friends want to believe it's the time of the Armageddon and the time of the rapture, that's good. That's your story. Those who deny that climate change is going on, that's their story. And those who are looking around and saying, holy shit, it's real. Climate change is real. Humanity is doomed. They are the doomers. And I'm a doomer, but I'm also a bloomer. So you might say I'm a doomer and a bloomer because I do trust that climate change is here. Now, as a very real uh, change in the world we see. Now, this is not new to me. I'm 74 years old. And I went to college in the 70s, 69, 70, to 70. Well, I was in law school. So I went to, and I had a family in there. So I was in school till 1978. And early on, I would say when I was a freshman in college, I was aware that we were doing things to the environment that were not good and that were going to likely spill our doom. Everybody was. It was common knowledge. Those of you who think that this is all new, you either were not around in 1970 or you were not paying attention to what people were talking about. But it was well known in my college life. In fact, a big deal for a lot of people at that time was whether they would have children, and if they would, how many, because overpopulation was a huge problem. And whether or not people want to accept this, overpopulation is a huge problem today, just like it was foreseen that it would be in 1970 and already was in 1970. It is a huge problem. A few cars spewing noxious fumes into the atmosphere probably would not create such a big problem as when you have 8 billion people on the face of the earth doing all kinds of things to try to improve their status, you might say, with material goods and faster cars and more toxic fumes and producing all these things that we need and digging deep into the earth in an effort to extract all the resources that won't be around for your grandchildren, that kind of thing. It was pretty logical that if you take all those resources now and use them up, it's going to deplete the options for our descendants. So now here we are, and climate change is a reality. I just read an article that said that, and I had been tracking this myself, so no surprise, that July of 2024 ended a record-breaking streak of temperatures, 13 months. But let me tell you a secret. It didn't break it. It didn't break the pattern by much. Last year was very, very off the scales, warm, the world temperatures. And this year is just barely dipped below it. So I'm going to show you a chart. This chart is not quite up to date because it's from I keep an eye on it every day, but it's from the main climate reanalyzer, and they update every day. However, they're usually a week behind in the air temperature, although the sea temperature marks and the ice extent are updated pretty much contemporaneously. So you can keep an eye on that. So as you can see here, The temperature in July of 2024. Now, this is the world average. So just because it's cool in your city or your neighborhood or warm in your neighborhood doesn't really matter so much to whether we're going through climate change as what the world average is. And so, as you can see, the world average heat, um, the world average heat uh, scores are very similar to what they were last year. You can see it dips a little bit below at one point and then it comes above. And not only does it come above, but it gives us the highest temperatures ever recorded, I believe, for 2 days running and 3 days out of a week or something, but the hottest week we could say ever recorded. And so it's only a tiny bit below what it was in 2023. And it's way, way above what the air temperatures were prior to 2023. The only reason it's not totally record breaking this year is because it was so out of sight last year. And so already you can see in August, the temperatures are marking what they were the first few days in August of 2023. And they are, I don't know what they are for the last week, because like I say, they're a week behind in the updating here. So I don't know if there's someplace on the web where you can get more current temperatures, some kind of Copernicus site, but I haven't figured it out. It's a little too technical for me. So I follow these things and I'm aware of what's going on. But although I was aware we had problems in 1970, and I've been around kids since 1970. I know in the 1990s, kids were saying they never didn't even believe they would grow up because of problems, whether they were environmental or because of nuclear capacity to bomb us all out of existence. The kids were very, very skeptical that I dealt with in the schools. And so we come to 2024. Here we are. And like everybody else, I just went along because I had a family to take care of and I had kids to raise and I had a job. I was an attorney. And so I went through all these things through my life. And although you know these things are there, they're on the back burner and you're just like, oh my God, look at what they're doing, look at what they're doing, look at what they're doing. But you're one person, you still have to take care of your kids. You still got to make sure that everybody's taken care of, things are okay in your environment, with your job, with everything. And so you're pretty busy and pretty occupied. And you say, what can I do? What can I do? Well, the reason that I'm talking to you today is because of what happened over a year ago. And what happened over a year ago is that somebody came to me and said, Steph, the time has come. The train is off the tracks. We're beyond the point of return. We can't just turn back the clock anymore. Climate change is a reality. And I said, oh, really? And I went online to research because that's what I do when I hear something from heaven's side. I research it. And I researched it, and lo and behold, on that particular day, there were people, scientists, and people who were keeping track of the records who were going, oh my God, the train has gone off the track. The train has gone off the track. And all of a sudden, the world was full of doomers. And a doomer, of course, is just someone who accepts that we have screwed up our world and now we need to deal with it or it'll deal with us. But as I say, I'm a doomer and a bloomer because I trust that there actually is method to this madness. I have to say that I'm not naturally a prepper. I'm not naturally a doomsday person. And so all of that came a little hard to me. I'm kind of have been for a long time, someone who just says it is what it is. Everything's okay. Everything's perfect because this is my reality. And even though I'm talking to you today about it, I still say everything is perfect because if you dig deep enough, if you expand your vision wide enough, if you have the elasticity to think you will be able to expand enough to understand how all these pieces are there, why they're there, and what's happening. And I'll tell you what's happening. What's happening is the evolution of humanity. And what is it evolving into? It is evolving into a different kind of consciousness, you might say, one that has given up the trust on good and evil, the bite out of the apple, original sin, da 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 da, and is trusting upon reality. And reality is the Trinity. And all of you who trust that there's no such thing, that you can click off this video now, go ahead, because I don't really care. I just want to talk to the ones who can hear, because the ones who can hear are the ones that are going to save humanity. And the rest of you can just go do whatever you do and let those who are ready get with it, get onto it. And they don't need to be obstructed by those who just want to do it their way. So if you trust on Armageddon, if you trust on the rapture, if you trust on the fact that God's going to lift you up into the sky and all the rest are going to be left on the earth to die, so be it. You know, this is not for you. This is for those who have not given up a trust on God energy or even God the Father, uh, because of the hypocrisy of religion. And it is also for those who have not given up on it because of the hypocrisy of the materialistic scientist, who, as I say, often engages in limited application of principle. It never applies to them. It's just all of that out there. They're sort of separate from their reality. And you see it over and over and over again. They never apply the principle back to themselves. I'm not saying everybody's like that. I'm saying a majority of those who I listen to, are a big majority, are like that. And so they close their ears if somebody says the word God. Boom. Can't hear you, can't hear you, can't hear you, because they are so biased against it. And they're biased against it because of the hypocrisy of the ones who have created this image of God based on their own likeness, and they tell God what to do. God, you have to condemn people. God, this person's bad, that person's good. And all the God people all over the world have different points of view. So the Muslims and the Christians have different points of view about who's going to heaven and who isn't, and what you need to do and what you don't need to do. And so, of course, it creates a logical problem for those who are using logic, and they say, well, I can't live with that. And so I'm going to shut the door on that. I'm done with it. But what they're doing is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So for those of you who haven't thrown the baby out with the bathwater, and usually if you've had a near-death experience, if you've had some kind of spiritually transformative experience, or your curiosity has just been so great and your elasticity, your ability to expand your point of view is so great, you'll still be with me here, because you understand that there is more to all of this than meets the eye of the materialist or the religionist, either one. As we say, the religionist depends upon a singularity. Usually that comes down to, I'm the God of the universe, and therefore I dictate what God says and what God does and what God will do and who's condemned and who's saved, etc. And then there is the dualist, the material scientist type, who says, well, there's two points of view. They sit down, usually they don't sit down and discuss it and dialogue about it. Usually they debate it, and they say, let's debate and see who's right. Like one side is going to be, cold is going to be more right than hot, or right is going to be more right than left. So they have a debate, and they're still based on winning. It's still based on being the winner, special. And then there are those who come to trust on the Trinity. And the Trinity is like saying there's this, there's that, and there's something that holds them together. Otherwise, the opposites would just go flying off forever and they would never be reconnected. It's a circle. And there's something in the circle that has its arms around reality, you might say. We speak of this as you, God, and reality. Everybody is a you a God and a reality, and it's a Trinity, and it's like a rope that is entwined so much that it cannot be separated. It's like when you taste the stew, and it's all part of the stew. You know, if you take some part out of it, it won't taste the same. However, you could make your stew a little bit different. Sometimes you want to think in terms of a singularity. Many people talk about non dualism. I think they're talking about something like wholeness, but we're talking about wholeness that has the singularity, the duality, and the trinity. So there is lots of room for differentiation, for movement, for change, for different alignments. And if you really truly had a singularity, there would be nothing. You know, the big zero. The big zero is the potential for everything, but in itself, you know, you got nothing because there's nothing to differentiate between this and that. You couldn't tell where the walls were it not for dark and light, for shadows. And so there's something that differentiates one from the other. And in a true singularity, there just isn't. And of course, the singularity is the God energy that divides into the lover and the beloved, as we say. Everything is a lover to the beloved, everything is a beloved to the lover. They switch places easily. And they're all held together by love, the singularity. So you got the singularity, God energy, which energizes everything and contains everything. You have the duality, experiential reality, and you have the Trinity, the understanding of the consciousness that permeates all of it and holds it all together. So, understanding that, thank you. And you can put it together in different ways because that's the nice thing about the Trinity. You can look at each of the parts in a little bit different way, and it's still a triangle or a triangular experience. So now we come to the idea of the eco village. So I was told about that a year ago, and I said, well, what do you know? The facts are there. You know, it matches reality, just another validation of the thousands and thousands that I've already gotten of what I'm told from the other side. And again, you know, this is my story. You can take it or leave it as you like. I don't really care because it's only for those who do care. It's only for those who want to share because sharing is how life is constantly created and transformed. It is through the movement of energy from one form to another. You could say even energy to matter and matter back to energy. It just keeps moving around. You know, game of musical chairs. If you don't get up and leave your chair to the next guy, the game comes to an end. So you got to get up and dance to the music. Anyway, so the idea of an eco village came when I was told that that's what I needed to do. And I was like, whoa, I'm pretty comfortable in my life. I'm retired. I have not a great income, but I'm able to slip by. I have a house that I can sell at some point and get some cash, although I'm pretty depleted of cash now because of all the responsibilities that come to us parents and dealing with kids, grandkids, etc. And so my retirement fund got kind of depleted, other than I have a house to sell, one left. And so I said, okay. And the idea was that at that point, it was to try to find the people who would join me in creating this eco village. And of course, I put out a lot of videos about it. There have been a lot of videos. You know, we've put out hundreds of videos actually. Steve has come through, others have come through to talk about the impending destructive energy that's coming to the earth, what needs to happen, etc. And what I was told is they would guide me to a safe place. And they would guide me to a safe place and other people who were able to live in a way that was not um, so destructive. In other words, people that could share, people that could trust on the Trinity, I guess would be a good way to say it. People that could trust on the sunshine and the sunset, who could just accept life as it comes on its own terms, who understood they're a part of nature, who could work with nature, who gave up their idea of good and bad and being the God of the universe and having to debate who's right and who's wrong and all of that kind of stuff. And little by little, they have explained how they want it to be. When I say they, I also include a couple of angels, archangels, who have come to me, Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel, in order to provide guidance. And I'm also talking to God the Father, because God the Father is a duality with God, the totality of everything. So everyone can have a personal relationship with God at the same time as God can be one and singular. And the best way that we can give an image of this is to imagine you're driving in a car and the moon follows you. You know, you're a little kid and you look up and you say, "Why is the moon following us, Mom or Dad?" And they say, "Well, the moon follows everyone, honey." And it does. The moon, there's only one moon, but it follows everyone as they're driving down the road. And so you can think of God that way. God can have a personal relationship with you at the same time as God has a relationship with everyone who is open. You got to look out the window at the moon to see that it's following you, right? You have to open yourself up to that connection. And of course, I have a pretty clear telepathic connection. And so you can think of this as my view, my story, my what's coming to me. And you can join in it if you want to. You can join with me. You can join in this story if you find it appealing and if it works for you. But if you don't find it appealing, you've probably already clicked out of this because you prefer to trust on your story, which might be the rapture, which might be climate change and we're all doomed and we only have one life to live anyway. The only thing that matters is there won't be any more of humanity, but once we're dead, what will we care? If that's your story, that's your story. And I find that most people who talk about climate change, that is their story. There is their story that they do not trust on life eternal. They do not trust on the soul, the spirit. They trust on when you're dead, and that this is not part of your story. Somehow it's outside you. Again, limited application of principle. It's outside you somehow. It's happening outside of you. Um, but those who trust on the Trinity, what we sometimes call the third option, are coming to see that you can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You have to come back to understand something at a very profound level. And the more you understand it at a profound level, the more you can understand it at a simple level. That you just do what you do and you say what you say. So in this community, which is a vision I've had probably all my life, although not in this particular way, is that if people would just do what was natural to them, if people would find that ability inside of themselves to listen to their heart, which would guide them, they would find their own unique path because nobody else is on it. Nobody else is on your path. It's yours. And when you're guided to it, you will know it. And so I must say, over the last 9 years, I have not met anybody who's really on my path. I've connected with people who want to come with me, but in terms of how it has been, nobody's on my path. And actually, for every one of you, that is true, but you still may not trust on it. You still may listen to the guidance counselor that says, if you take this job, go into this field, you'll make more money. Or I think you'd be good at this or that. And you say, but I just want to be a musician. And they say, well, you can't make any money at being a musician, so whatever. So you accept that and you turn your back on what your heart is telling you. In the new community, people will not turn their back on their heart. They will say, well, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be. And everybody else will say, great, great. We're so happy to hear that because we need all the different points of view. We need the different parts of you to make a community. We have to trust that if you do what you love, if everyone does what they love, it will work together because God has it in hand. It's nature, it's natural. There is something that is coordinating everything, keeping everything balanced. If you trust on it, if you don't trust on it, you're going to destroy your world and da 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 da. And so I was told about a certain location where we should locate over a year ago. And I said, okay. And I've been talking about that with people. It was described to me. And I didn't know that there was this place because it wasn't yet publicly available, but I kind of zeroed in on that location and thought I had it, but I didn't. But I would look at other properties in the area or even, in the state or next state. And I would say, would this be okay? And they would say, no, that's not okay for this reason or that reason or the other reason. And there's always a lot of considerations that have been told to me, which include safest location in terms of earth changes, safest location for food security, safest location to avoid pandemonium, chaos, and stuff in the public, um, and long term survival, the ability to become self sustaining as a community and to stay in connection with God. For example, I was told that there would eventually be a big epidemic, pandemic, that would be much worse than COVID. And just when people think that they've kind of figured out how to stay safe, along would come this pandemic, and it would be brutal. This is what I'm told. And these things can change according to human consciousness. If human consciousness changes things, you can change directions. My life has changed directions from what I thought it would be quite a bit. And so life can change for all of humanity if the total consciousness reflects an energy that will change it. But as it looks now, there's going to be a big pandemic that's going to come through. It's going to be brutal, brutal. And this will be on top of existing climate change things and earth upheaval, earthquakes, volcanoes, that kind of things also. And so in my community, because we stay in touch with God energy and with those heaven side, we will be warned when it's time to shut the doors, so to speak, and isolate ourselves so that we don't have to deal with that illness. And I've been told the time scale, sort of, but the biggest time scale is the time scale for becoming self-sufficient. So I'm told that things will get worse until 2050. We need to start working now in order to create our community and be self-sufficient by 5 years, maybe 10 years. By 2100, the bulk of, I'll just say it, the bulk of the population will be gone. Because of the destructive nature, because people don't want to change. They don't want to go somewhere else. So anyway, I've been led to a certain location, and by golly, not so long ago, it appeared. And I was like, whoa, whoa, major validation, whoa. Even though I had trusted on it, I was trusting on a little different location, thinking that that was it, because I didn't know of this place. But, people have come to me and they have said, what about this state? What about that state? What about this country? And I'll ask. And generally it's no, it might be okay for a while, but eventually there's going to be this problem or that problem or the other problem. You might get by longer than other places, but da 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 da. So anyway, the idea of this new village community is that it would be for people who do trust on the Trinity, who do trust on heaven's side, who do trust on a reality of incarnation, reincarnation, that you will inherit the world you leave behind. You're going to have to come back and clean up your messes, people. You're not going to get out of here and say, well, at least I got out before all the worst happened. It's going to happen to you. You're going to come back. And you want to come back into a devastated world, you may. But you can barely survive, and you may not even be able to survive to adulthood if you even have a way to be reincarnated into a body. And of course, I've gotten lots and lots of information about that. I've gotten tons of information. But anyway, so the current goal is to begin now to move forward with this eco village. And in that vein, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. I can only take it day to day. And I can only say, well, this is the next leg of the journey. I don't know where it's going. But I'm currently working on selling my house. And hopefully it will go through as someone in the family wants to purchase it in a short time to put some cash in my pocket because we still have to purchase uh, the designated property that we've been led to. Um, but it looks very good. Looks like it has what we need. And so right now we have a group, small group working on this. We do have room for, it's just going to be a few families beginning because of the location, the space, etc. And they need to keep to small, start small with a group that can always come to unanimity in decision making. So we're still open to finding the one person, other person or family that wants to come in with us, but there's no rush. And then once we are established, then of course others will be able to join as well. But it's not just people who say, I want to live in a self sustaining community. It has to be people that can understand what this community is about. It has to be people that can trust on heaven's side. It has to be people that can trust on being led. And so that throughout the development of this community, we continue to trust on those people who do have a connection with heaven, a clear connection. Right now, I'm the only one in the group that has one connection that is this clear, where I can hear word for word. And they just move the pendulum around the board as they want. Plus, I can hear them telepathically then and also when I'm away from the pendulum. Um, Although it's become a little more difficult to hear when I'm away from the pendulum because I've become so dependent on it. They'll still come and start talking to me, but sometimes it's a little more difficult because the energy has changed. Because as part of using the pendulum, when I'm not using it, I don't have to worry about trying to stay in communication. If they want to talk to me, I'll get the impulse to go pick up the pendulum, or they'll say, Steph, I want to talk, and I'll pick up the pendulum. And so that's where we are right now. Again, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I thought it is a good idea to begin a blog, you might say, on this developing eco village to share the experience of how it goes. Right now, the weather has been very conducive in this particular location. And my understanding is that because of a confluence of many factors, there won't be that much disruption for it. The climate will actually be more conducive than ever for development. But everybody has to trust on their own guidance as to where they go. Don't come to me for guidance about where you should locate. You need to ask your own heart. This is an enterprise that I'm getting into with those people who, over time, have established themselves as good friends who um, have the flexibility to trust on the Trinity. And each of them, of course, has their own issues in terms of picking up and moving into a beginning, you could say, a homesteading, group homesteading site, an eco village. Um, we got family, jobs, everything else. And this is something I did not think I would be doing uh, a year ago, or a little more than a year ago. But if you'd asked me fully 9 years ago if I could imagine myself communicating every day with those heaven side, including Steve Jobs and a zillion other people, and even God energy and archangels. I would have laughed. I didn't. It just wasn't in my reckoning as where my life was going. So here we are, and we will continue. This is the first of a series, of hopefully, of our progress in creating this eco village. Thank you for being part of it.